everybody, and welcome back to Only Stupid Answers. This is the show where we answer your questions about movies, TV shows, comic books, Deadpools, and Tom Bombadils. That's right, gang.
Who is Tom Bombadil?
I'm going to let you know. That's what we're talking about today. I'm your host, DJ Wooldridge. With me, as always, is Roxy Stryer. Roxy, when I say the name Tom Bombadil, what immediately springs to your mind?
I feel like Jungle Man.
Jungle Man. All right, well, we'll get into it.
Yeah. Jungle Man.
Yeah. You know what? You're not the farthest off. We'll get into it. But before we do that, a little business up top. As always, if you want more of this lovely content and Patreon exclusive shows like Spider-Versity or What We're Into, you can do that over at patreon.com/OnlyStupidAnswers. If you listen on iTunes, please give us a 5-star review. We really appreciate it. If you listen on Spotify every week, we ask a question or do a poll. Last week's was a poll, and the question was, which type of apocalypse would you prefer? Roxy, here were the answers. Nuclear, zombie, robot, or alien apocalypse. Of those 4 apocalypsi, what do you think the kids at home chose? Don't look at the docket censor.
No, I'm not going to look.
Okay.
I know that you picked... I know that you picked the alien one.
No, I was zombie. I think zombie is the one we could handle the best.
And then I think that they probably agree. No, I think they think alien.
Do you think they picked alien? That was one of them. Okay. So
based on your response, I don't think that. You seem so disappointed in me. What? You said, you think that they picked alien?
Oh, well, we'll see. Okay, so alien was 20% of the vote. Robot got none. Nobody wants a robot apocalypse.
No, robot's bad. Robot's bad.
No, robots are bad. Zombie apocalypse got 20% of the vote. Nuclear apocalypse won with 60% of the vote. And I think...
Oh, that's what I did.
That is what you did. And I
wouldn't have thought that other people would have thought that because... That's messy.
Yeah, it's a messy one. And it's interesting. I feel like maybe I should have specified more because, which apocalypse would you prefer? I guess the implicit part of that is that if you were to live in an apocalypse, I guess people were like, nuclear would be fine. I also think, though, we'll talk about this in What We're Into. I saw Furiosa, and since we last recorded. And I always feel like when people watch these like post-apocalyptic whatever, they always think they're like Mad Max or Furiosa. But in Furiosa, there's these people that live underground and eat other people. It's like that seems to be the majority of people. It's
my revelation when you posted the clip from last week was that zombies.
Yeah.
Like, that's obviously the answer. I mean, that's just like being with some evil people, which we already are.
Yeah, exactly. And what was funny about that too is that one of the biggest hangups with the zombies, other than you have to find brains, is that but the brains give you powers. That's a key factor. But you can't have sex or else you make somebody else a zombie. And it's like that seems like kind of low stakes, but compared to like Walking Dead, that seems manageable.
Interesting. I feel like it could be a really good argument for people to not sleep together. Way better than any current argument that there is. I
would like to think that maybe that would slow some people down, but I don't know that I don't.
That's crazy, DJ. You don't think that's crazy. I remember how good that show was. We used to talk about that back in the day.
Yeah, I want to say that was part of Superhero Roundup, even though now that I think about it, I don't know that it quite fits that branding.
I think it does because at the time it was on CW with all the superhero shows.
Yeah, and it has you get like the abilities of the people whose brains you eat. The lead in it, Rose McIver, is in the show my mom likes called Ghosts that I've never watched.
And you know him, Sean Whalen, I think was in the pilot of that.
Pilot? Nice.
I think he was. Yeah, I haven't seen that show either. But I feel like isn't Raul Coley like friend of the show for you or something?
Yeah, we had him on the show back in the day. I think he's probably a bit too big for the show now. But it was right before or right during Bly Manor we had him on. Oh yeah, like right before.
No, not What was the Midnight Mass was his big one for.
Yeah, it was Bly Manor, then Midnight Mass, and now he's on that Hulu show.
And I watched it, Death and Other Details. He is a stud.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll reach back out, see what he's up to. Hey man, come back on. So yeah, those were your preferred apocalypsi. Now let's get into some news. Apocalypse. Yeah, everybody's favorite X-Men villain, Apocalypse. Leonard Kim says Ghost is a really fun show. I feel like Ghost is one of those things that like you'll see an announcement. It's usually like CBS shows where they'll be like, guys, bad news. Blue Bloods has been canceled after 12 seasons. And you're like, excuse me, what? How many? What? It's either a show I'm barely aware of or just heard of has been on for 12 years.
Is that how you feel, though, about Grey's Anatomy? Because I don't want to hear it then, DJ.
No, well, because Grey's Anatomy is a show I'm aware of. And now Grey's Anatomy, I feel like, is almost famous for how long? Because it's, what, 20 seasons or something like that?
Let me think. Is that the right number? Let me look it up.
Yeah.
20 or 21. And I've watched every episode.
No.
How many seasons? Yeah, you didn't know that?
No. You haven't missed one?
Yeah. 20 seasons. Okay. Every episode I've watched.
Okay,
I've never missed an episode.
Rank the episodes off the top of your head.
How many episodes is that? I mean, this is one of those shows that still has like 20-something episodes a season.
Yeah. No, it's not. Yeah, so Grey's Anatomy doesn't stand out to me in that same way because it is, one, a show I'm aware of, and two, a show that
420 episodes, DJ.
That's crazy.
Like, you know how shows will really celebrate getting to 100 episodes? Like, that's a big milestone.
Yeah.
We did that 4 times and it's still running.
Yeah, 20 seasons. Yeah, that's crazy. That is crazy. I mean, God bless them, all of them, for the paychecks they're getting. But it stands out to me more when it's either a show I've never heard of or a show I'm vaguely aware of, and then it's been on for like ever. And it's like, where did that? And it's just that I'm not the demographic. I'm not the one watching that show.
I ain't the one. I'm the one.
It's you, Roxy, because you watch all the shows. I don't know how you keep up with your other shows considering you have 20 seasons of Grey's Anatomy.
I know, and it's so good this season because like Meredith left, but now it's the 20th season, so that's probably why she's there a lot. But she's in a different place, but we go to that place and like she's really breaking boundaries right now. Like you probably didn't know this, but she's really working hard to solve diseases. Like she's curing diseases.
Good. Are they like our diseases or is it like fictional ones they're making up for her to fix?
No, there are. It's like Alzheimer's is going to be a thing of the past because of Meredith Grey. And like you didn't realize that, DJ, but now you know.
All right. That feels tricky narratively, but all right. I'll give them that, you know.
Remember when they did one season? I think I told you this. They did one season about COVID. Mm-hmm. Everybody was wearing masks. And then at the end of the season, they went to the next season and they didn't know that COVID was still going to be around. So they put up a thing that started every episode. In the real world, COVID is absolutely still a thing. Yeah. On our show, we've decided to ditch it.
We're done. Narratively doesn't work for us anymore. Bye.
It's so iconic. They were just like, we're fucking over this.
Yeah. We got other diseases to talk about. God damn it.
Really good.
Fucking Grey's
Anatomy.
Really
good stuff, DJ. You got to get on the Grey's Anatomy train while you can.
And they're still letting Shonda Rhimes make it's like, doesn't she have enough? She has a show that's been on 20 seasons. Doesn't she have enough of the market share? Come on.
I don't think she does anything on the show anymore since she got that Netflix deal.
But you know she's still getting paychecks.
Oh, obviously. Yeah. She's the creator.
Yeah, she's still getting paychecks.
It. Duh.
All right, let's go into some news. And I know everybody's itching at home to hear us talk about Tom Bombadil, but before we do that, let's talk about this Knives Out announcement from, I got this via Deadline. We've got a title for Knives Out 3, Wake Up, Dead Man. Aside from Craig's return, this is what Deadline has to say about it. Aside from Craig's return as Benoit Blanc, so far Josh O'Connor from Challengers and The Crown, Kaylee Spaney from Priscilla and Civil War, and Andrew Scott, All of Us Strangers, Ripley, Fleabag. He was also Moriarty in the Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch. He's great. Have joined the cast of the third installment. Johnson's previous films were very star-studded, so more announcements can be expected in the coming days. Deadline exclusively broke the news that Kerry Washington is joining the sequel film, and Glenn Close is apparently her casting announcement is close. Now, this was whenever I made this doc, so I don't know as of this moment. The cast could have ballooned even further than that. But that is who we have so far. Roxy, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking specifically about Andrew Scott right now because we'll talk about this in what we're into, but I'm watching him in Ripley, and it took me a minute to be like, oh my God, that's the priest from Fleabag.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
He is very good. He is very good.
He's unbelievably good. He's also an absolute chameleon. Like, I just think he's so different in every role, which is wild. That's currently what I was thinking about. Then I was thinking about how prior to that, Kaylee Spaney just seems to be having like the biggest blow up of all time in the last year.
Yeah.
I feel like her name is just attached to absolutely every single project. And the fact that I think that they do a really good job with the Knives Out franchise of bringing new people up, not new people, people who are like up and coming, but like on the brink of being A-list celebrities and mixing them with some of the absolute biggest people on the planet. Glass Onion did that really well with, what's the name of that blonde girl? You know what I'm talking about. Not Kate Hudson, obviously. Madeline Klein.
Yeah.
Like I had been telling you that I was obsessed with Madeline Klein on Outer Banks, and she's just like about to be a massive household name star, but not quite there yet. And they did that there. And I think that they're doing that here also. The cast never disappoints. The other thing I was thinking, DJ, just to keep giving you all my thoughts as you were talking about it, is the way you said "Wake Up, Dead Man" is so different than the way I say "Wake Up, Dead Man."
Say it.
So you said "Wake Up, Dead Man," and it sounded very, very much like a parody.
Okay.
I was in my head. I had just been hearing "Wake Up, Dead Man." And like yours is a direction to the dead man. Like you're talking to the dead man.
Get up.
Wake up.
Yeah.
Dead man. And mine is like, we need to wake up, dead man. And I don't know.
You know, we'll see when we see it. So I just looked it up. As of an hour before this recording, they just announced that Daryl McCormack has joined the cast. Along with, we have Mila Kunis and Jeremy Renner. Along with the people I just listed, Glenn Close.
Did you say Lindsay Lohan?
I heard the rumor. It does not. I'm looking at Variety right now, and it doesn't seem to be confirmed. She's not mentioned here.
It's interesting. On IMDb, here are the people who are listed. It says Tom Hardy, and then parentheses, rumored. And then the only other person it says that about is Lindsay Lohan, parentheses, rumored.
Yeah.
And then everybody else looks confirmed, including they added Daryl McCormack already, Kerry Washington, Glenn Close, Mila Kunis, Jeremy Renner, Daniel Craig, Andrew Scott, Josh O'Connor, Kaylee Spaney. But the only two rumored on IMDb are Tom Hardy and Lindsay Lohan.
I'm into that.
Well, it makes me think that Lindsay Lohan is actually going to be in this, which she is like my queen.
Yeah.
Why is everything I'm saying stunning you today?
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? I was trying to think of what's my follow-up question to Lindsay Lohan has that always been the case, like since Parent Trap?
I said Lindsay Lohan's my queen. You said, yeah.
I mean, duh. No, maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was like, yeah, we know that, Roxy. That's not news.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, of course. I mean, like every phase of my life, there was another Lindsay Lohan is my queen moment. Lindsay Lohan is my queen, Parent Trap. Lindsay Lohan is my queen, Mean Girls. Lindsay Lohan is my queen. She had her own show on the OWN network, Oprah Winfrey Network, called Lindsay. That was the most egregious, outrageous reality show I've ever seen. This is like the most specific to me, Lindsay Lohan is a queen thing, because other people don't even know this existed because it has been completely wiped from the internet. Like, you cannot find this anywhere. Lindsay signed up to do a 10-episode reality show about her life. Then on the start of the taping date, Lindsay decided she didn't want to film it. And so the reality crew just stands outside her house filming her door until Oprah comes to the door and knocks on it and is like, Lindsay, you need to come out. And you need to film. And Lindsay's like, I don't want to film Oprah. And Oprah's like, why'd you sign the contract then? Like, we are paying you for this. You can't just not do the show. And finally, it's like culminates in an hour episode where Lindsay and Oprah sit down about why Lindsay doesn't want to do this.
Wait,
and it was like,
did you talk about this on the show? Did I read this someplace else? When did this happen? I'm vaguely familiar. It sounds vaguely familiar.
I'm going to look it up right now. I honestly want to say 10 years ago.
Wow.
But if we've ever done something like, what's the one show that you think is the most underrated? Like, I probably brought it up. Let's see. Lindsay Lindsay Oprah Winfrey Network. Like, seriously, this is like the hardest thing to find. Okay. Lindsay Oprah Winfrey Network, 2014.
No way.
So it was 10 years ago.
That's insane. That's insane. Time is weird, man. All right. Well, listen.
This is lies about the definition of the show. The docuseries follows her return to New York to reunite with her friends and family in an effort to stay on the right track and build a new life. Lohan opens up for the cameras more than she has in the past, discussing topics ranging from the recovery process to run into the paparazzi. Yeah, maybe in the last episode, bro.
Yeah, not the rest of the show. That's wild. Well,
how's my glitch?
You're doing good. You're doing good. And considering I cut that out for those at home, hey man, watch live for all the fun technical issues.
Yeah, true. And if you didn't know what we were talking about, just know that I appreciate positive affirmations. So thank you, DJ.
Yeah. So now the other big piece of news this week, everybody, I will, before we move on from Wake Up, Dead Man, or however I pronounced it before, I know, and they mentioned in the Deadline article that Ryan Johnson wasn't a fan of a Knives Out mystery. He kind of wanted a Benoit Blanc mystery. And apparently Netflix is still not buckling on that one. It's still Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery.
Oh, you're talking about literally just the terminology.
Yeah, the title, the subtitle to the movie.
What do you think about that? Like, do you think that's just a smarter business move, or do you think they should give Ryan what he wants?
I understand both sides, because on the one hand, like if you're watching this, because you saw Knives Out, you know what I mean, and you know Knives Out, and we know from the creative side, it's like, no, Knives Out is just one of the mysteries. Like, it's not, I'm not super brushed up on my Agatha Christie novels, but like each one didn't have the subtitle like an Orient Express mystery. I might have just mixed up my metaphors there, but we're rolling with it. You all get my point. And it's more about the detective than the specific mystery. But like, do general audiences, are they super if you say like a Benoit Blanc mystery, you're like, oh yeah, Daniel Craig.
If you had said it to me from jump, I would know. But like, I do think it's difficult at this point. Like, if all of them had been that as the subtitle.
Yeah, if even like Knives Out, a Benoit Blanc mystery.
Benoit Blanc, exactly.
I think the only time you can get away with that bullshit is 50 years ago when you're George Lucas coming off of Star Wars, where you're like, actually, the first movie's episode 4, and we're going to do, you know what I mean? Like that, only George Lucas was able to get away with that in that very specific context.
Okay, DJ, as somebody who is about to be with child.
Yes.
Like, do you ever think about trying to explain that to your kid when they become of age to be able to be a Star Wars fan? Like, what are you going to do? Sit down and watch what with them first?
Well, I don't know. We're not.
Star Wars is your jam, but
yeah. I've thought about it because I know some people started with episode 1, and I do see merits in that it only gets better from there. Eventually, it takes a minute, but it gets better from there. But I think you explain it, because this is the part that weirds me out. My dad had to explain that to me before episode 1 was a thing. Episode 1 hadn't come out, but they were already rebranding them episode 4, 5, and 6. And he had to explain like, well, there's this stuff before. And it's like the old Flash Gordon serials. So at least now I have the benefit of like the other episodes exist.
You remember that conversation?
Yeah, because it stood out. It blew my mind as a kid. Like, wait, you can just decide your first movie is actually the 4th movie? Like, I had to spend a lot of time thinking about what that meant before episode 1 was even announced. Did
you like go and tell your friends that? Like,
no.
Guess what?
Yeah. Well, now I need to look back at, because obviously that was young enough stuff blurs together. I wonder when that rebranding, like, did he call Empire Strikes Back Episode 5, or did that rebranding happen when they did the re-releases?
Oh, interesting question.
Like, when did that, how far in the process, like when Return of the Jedi came out, was it already Episode 6? And audiences, I guess he would have had to have trafficked on that audience's familiarity with old movie serials, where like you just go to the theater and there's a Flash Gordon serial in front of the movie you're watching, and you're like, oh, I guess this is episode 12 or whatever. Who cares? And you
4, 5, and 6 were branded as 4, 5, and 6 long before 1, 2, and 3 were in production.
That's what I remember, like, because I remember my dad having to explain it to me before I even knew what episode 1 was. So then when they announced episode 1, I was like, oh, so now we're going back and doing the thing. But I don't.
That is so weird. I don't remember that.
Star Wars.
I believe you, but I don't remember that.
A New. Well, of course, even originally, A New Hope wasn't A New Hope. It was just Star Wars.
Yeah.
Hold on.
That I know.
Let's see. I don't want to drag the show down, but let's see if I can get into.
Well, that's on me. Sorry, I can't help it.
The subtitles, episode 4, A New Hope, was added for the 1981 re-release. That's wild. Okay, and so for the kids playing.
In 1981, that's when they started calling it episode 4.
A New Hope. Yeah, that's insane. So, and also for the kids playing at home, before Netflix, before DVD, before VHS, they would just re-release movies because that'd be the only way you get to see them ever again. You didn't have home media. That wasn't a thing. So they would re-release. And so it's also why, like, I think Star Wars was in, you know, like now my wife and I just noticed that the first Omen.
They didn't have VHS then?
In 81? I don't think so. Wasn't VHS the mid 80s?
Let me look.
So my wife and I just saw that the first Omen is streaming on Hulu. By the way, I like the first Omen quite a bit. And it like just came out. I think Star Wars, the original Star Wars, was in theaters for like a full year. Because again, at the time, home media wasn't a thing.
Okay, this says VHS is a standard tape cassettes invented in 1976.
Okay.
By Victor Company of Japan, JVC. It was the dominant home video format throughout the tape media period in the 1980s and 1990s.
Yeah, so it was invented in the 70s, and we're probably just adopting it in the 80s. And it says here the subtitle brought the film in line with the 1980 sequel. So New Hope was re-released a year after Empire Strikes Back, and Empire Strikes Back had the episode 5 title. Dude, that tells you is the amount of clout George Lucas had, because that's insane. Like, no studio would let anybody do that. Like, no, you're not going to say Wake Up Dead Man is the 7th Benoit Blanc movie with the implication that we're going to go back and make they won't even let him call it a Benoit Blanc mystery. They're forcing him to call it a Knives Out mystery. So that just tells you, like, where in the 80s, where not only where Star Wars was at, but where George Lucas was at, and kind of where the industry was at, that he was like, yeah, it's actually my second movie is actually episode 5.
Do you think everybody in the room with him was like, that's nuts? No.
I mean, you know, I think the question is, when did people stop? Because we've seen the prequels. When did people stop saying that stuff? I think after, because if you've heard the stories, the behind-the-scenes stories of the first Star Wars, pretty much everybody was like, this is stupid. And then it made all of the money. And I think that's the point where people stopped telling George Lucas, that's nuts.
That's when they're like, okay, fine, you can call it episode 4 if you want.
Yeah. And that paid off. 2 more movies, that paid off. And it's still, truthfully, even though, depending on how you feel, if you're from my generation, maybe the prequels aren't your jam, it still paid off. This movie still made money. We're still making Star Wars. So, you know. I'm probably going to do a video, but I just rewatched Phantom Menace recently. I'm probably going to do a video on it. So stay tuned for that, kids. But speaking of prequels, transition, we've got our first major announcement for The Rings of Power Season 2 from Vanity Fair. And that is Tom Bombadil's showing up, everybody. According to Vanity Fair. Yeah.
Give me more.
I'll give you more. According to Vanity Fair, Tom Bombadil has finally been invited to one of the long and winding road trips through Middle-earth. The mystical character is one of the more offbeat figures in the J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings saga, a woodland-dwelling man with an ethereal presence and a penchant for nonsense songs and brightly colored clothes, who helps rescue the hobbits from peril early in the first book, The Fellowship of the Ring. God, I'm struggling today. So yeah, Roxy,
it's in the world, it's not you, DJ. It's not possible to you.
We're all struggling. Yeah. So in the Fellowship of the Ring, there's an early passage just when the hobbits are leaving Hobbiton. They run into a few troubles, and they're helped by a mystical woodland figure known as Tom Bombadil. This still I have, if you're watching the video of it, that shows him on the left, is pretty close to how he's described in the book. He helps them out, and he's a mysterious figure, but what we learn about him is that he kind of is a representative of the woods and nature. He's married to a character called Goldberry, who's supposed to be, I think, quote, the spirit of the river.
Goldberry?
Goldberry, yeah.
That's like... It's very Austin Powers, it feels.
Yeah. So we have a couple quotes from the showrunners of The Rings of Power. There's a reason why he hasn't been in prior adaptations, because in some ways he's sort of an anti-dramatic character. Co-showrunner J.D. Payne tells Vanity Fair. He's not a character who has a particularly strong agenda. He observes drama, but largely doesn't participate in it. In the Fellowship of the Ring, the characters kind of just go there and hang out for a while, and Tom drops some knowledge on them, adds the other showrunner, Patrick McKay. Knowledge that's not particularly relevant to anything that they're doing or about to do. Tolkien himself was hazy about the character's purpose and said he kept Bombadil in the story even though he didn't have a clear purpose plot-wise. Quote, Tom Bombadil is not an important person to the narrative, Tolkien wrote in a 1954 letter to his proofreader for The Lord of the Rings. I suppose he has some importance as a, quote, comment. I mean, I do not really write like that. He represents something that I feel important, though. He represents something that I feel is important, though I would not be prepared to analyze the feeling precisely. So Tom is kind of a beloved. It's kind of a couple things, I would argue. Tom is kind of beloved because he represents kind of the more fantastical fairy tale element of Lord of the Rings, and I would argue is kind of a good transition from The Hobbit into the darker stuff of what the rest of the Lord of the Rings is. But he's also kind of become a cult figure in that he's cut from every adaptation. He's not in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies. So there's this kind of, if you've read the books, you're like, where are we going to get Tom Bombadil? I bought the extended editions of every single one of those Lord of the Rings movies, hoping Tom Bombadil would show up in one of them. He doesn't. And I would argue they cut the right stuff. Watching those extended editions as an adult, you're like, well, this just makes the movie longer. I don't know that it helps. But yeah, so as a fan, I have mixed feelings on this, Roxy, because as a fan, cool that Tom Bombadil is finally going to be in an adaptation. Been wanting to see it. Rings of Power theoretically is the absolute right show for him to show up in. On the other hand, it is Rings of Power, and the first season was not good in my opinion, and so I'm concerned.
My follow-up questions to you, I have several. Number one, are you planning on watching the second season of the show?
No, actually, I'm kind of not. Unless we cover it on this show, no. I mean, I think what I'll do is maybe I'll get lured in, guys. I've been lured in before, but if you all report back and say Tom Bombadil is really cool, I might check that out.
So that was going to be my next one. Like, Tom Bombadil pushes the needle for you that much?
I like abstractions in my fantasy media, things that represent bigger ideas that are kind of hard to describe. I like the idea. I don't necessarily, I understand what they're saying from if you view narrative as plot, Tom Bombadil doesn't move the plot forward. I think narrative is more than just plot. So I do think Tom Bombadil, I agree with Tolkien, he does matter to the story. Although I don't have it here, but he did have another quote. There was a script, a pitch to do a movie well before J.R. Tolkien's well before Peter Jackson's, when Tolkien was still alive. And he was like, I actually would rather you cut Tom Bombadil than like not have him be meaningful. So he wasn't opposed to cutting the character. So I like what he represents. I feel like, mine, use all of the animal. He's a part that hasn't been used. I think Rings of Power kind of strained to find things to do in its first season. So incorporating characters like Bombadil is a good idea. He's being played by Rory Kinnear, who you might be familiar with from Our Flag Means Death. He was in Men. He was in Penny Dreadful.
Look up because I know all of those things.
I think Rory Kinnear's great. I don't know that he'd be my first choice for Tom, but he is great. So I think if people report back that,
I love this guy.
yeah, he's good. He's real good. He's real good.
Wait, none of that is what is the main thing? Okay, keep going, but come back to me.
No, I'm good. I'm just, if he's good in it, I might check it out. But to go back to this image, on the left of him is, I think the character's called the Stranger. I don't remember in season 1 where we left the Stranger. Did we reveal he was a wizard? Did we say he was Gandalf or Saruman? I actually don't remember. That's not great as far as me wanting to come back for the show. Like, I don't remember what we did in the first season.
This is one of the only shows I've ever completely bailed on.
Yeah. Didn't you bail after the first episode?
I think I made it through 2.
Okay.
I always give shows 6 episodes. That's like my thing. I'm like, okay, because it could change. I was dreading watching this show.
Yeah.
After I was like, I really don't want to watch this. And then I was like, then don't, Rox, because it wasn't like that popular that I needed to.
Yeah.
People weren't talking about it that much. But my diehard Lord of the Rings friends seemed to like it. So I was like, okay, maybe this was for the diehards. If it was for the diehards, you probably shouldn't have spent as much money on it as you did. But
probably not good to make it the most expensive show in history.
This guy, Rory Kinnear, I know him from a million things. Obviously, you named half of them. But recently, I was like, oh, what did he just crush in? He was recently in that show, The Diplomat, that I really liked.
Yeah.
Do you remember me talking about that at all? The Terry Russell one that reminds me of The Americans?
Yeah.
Which you and I both loved.
Yeah.
And he was awesome in that. He's really good.
Yes.
Honestly, way more than the character. He gets me super excited for things. Like, will I check this out because he's in it? Probably not. But does he move the needle a little bit? Yes.
Yeah, I didn't even know when I was putting stuff together. Like, I his image came up on a side by side. I'm like, hold up, is he Tom Bombadil? Well, that gets me more interested even than the show. We'll see. I think I'll wait and hear reports back because I found Rings of Power to be a real slog. So we will see. That is the news for this week.
That's Amazon, right?
Yeah.
What is your favorite Amazon show?
Fallout. And Mr. and Mrs. Smith is up there too. Reacher is good. Reacher is watchable. I don't know that I would argue Reacher is good, but I enjoy watching it.
Did I put that on my list for what we're into this week?
Reacher?
Yeah.
You should have. We'll talk about it. Are you caught up?
I just finished it.
Yeah. So you know what I mean when I say I don't know that I would argue that it is good, but it is very watchable, and I do watch it.
Watch the whole thing. I just binged it in 2 weeks.
We'll put it on what we're into. I'm interested to know your thoughts. Because by the time I finished watching it, everybody else, it was too late. Everybody else had talked about it. So now we get to catch up together. But what about you? Okay, so for me, the easy tops are Fallout or Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
I'd have to remember what all of the top, let's say best Amazon shows.
Yeah.
Like the reason I was asking is because to me they're just so far behind.
Oh, The Boys. The Boys is very good.
Oh, we love that show. Isn't that coming back soon?
Yeah, it's coming back soon. The Boys and Gen V. I did not watch season 2 of Invincible. I liked Invincible, but just for some reason, season 2, I guess nobody was talking about it, so I was like, whatever.
Well, I can't even find the best Amazon Prime shows. It's saying a bunch of stuff that's on Netflix because Amazon Prime does that thing where you can buy, the episodes.
Yeah. And it's one of those. I actually like quite a few Amazon shows, which, if I'm being honest, actually kind of bums me out. Dude, Roxy, I think they're the ones doing the Criminal show. There's one of my favorite comics of all time is Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips' Criminal, and it's being adapted to a show, and I think it's an Amazon show. And while and the cast is great so far, they've been doing cast announcements recently, and it's like, oh, this is going to be dope. But I don't love supporting Amazon. I don't love it, but I do. I want to watch Criminal. I Am a Virgo was great. Yeah, they do. They have good stuff. The people running stuff. I just don't love supporting Amazon.
Like the shows that this lists are all things that I watched elsewhere, so it's kind of confusing. Oh, was Swarm on Amazon?
I believe so. That was
so Donald Glover, all his stuff, it goes over there. Was Fleabag on Amazon?
Fleabag, it wasn't originally. I think it was originally a British production, but I think they have it for us Americans. That's where I watched it.
This describes it as arguably the best original series yet produced by Amazon.
Oh, maybe it was. I don't know.
And if it was, then that would be my favorite.
That's very good. It's very, very good. They
also do the freebie shows, which you and I like.
Yeah.
Like
R.I.P. Primo.
Yeah, R.I.P. Primo.
Yeah.
Did they do Marvelous Mrs. Maisel? I loved that one also.
Yeah, they actually have good shit. It's just, again, it's just a bummer that it's Amazon.
And you loved The Expanse. Was that Amazon?
They took it. It was a sci-fi show. They took it for the last 2 or 3 seasons, and God bless them. I am very grateful that they did, because that show is incredible.
I guess that my answer would be somewhere between Fleabag and Fallout.
Yeah.
And Maisel.
I mean, all the ones we just listed are good shows. They do that, and they have the money to do good shows. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we listed a couple. Like, think about how many I can list on HBO or on Hulu or on Netflix.
But you know, HBO and Hulu, if you consider FX, they have that legacy. They have been doing it for a lot longer than Amazon has.
That's true, but they haven't been doing it longer than Apple, and Apple's been doing it as long as Amazon, I think.
Yeah, but I don't think that list would be as long on Apple. I think maybe with Severance and stuff like that, there's be more passion between some of them, but I don't know that, like.
Oh my God, I feel like my Apple list is so long.
Yeah.
Let's look. Like, well, because not just Severance, but also Silo, which we loved. But let me look. Like, Apple be putting out shows that are my top show consistently every single month.
Yeah.
I haven't watched Dark Matter yet, but I am gonna watch it. Okay. Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
I want Masters of the Air, The Morning Show, all which I love. Manhunt, which was awesome. Severance, of course, we mentioned.
Yeah.
There's a ton more, I think.
Okay, well, I guess my Apple list is shorter. I do like a lot of Apple shows, but, and again, this is not in defense of Amazon. I just want to make that clear. All right.
You're an Amazon fan, admit it.
No. All right, gang. Let's get on the main topic today. I was in the mood to start getting prepared for Deadpool and Wolverine, which, as of this recording, is coming to theaters very soon. I think you can get your tickets now. So we're going to be talking a little bit about Deadpool's history from the comics to the screen. Roxy, what was your introduction to the Merc with the mouth?
I think it was the movie. I think I knew of him, but I don't think I had read anything of his. I think it was him on the big screen.
Well, was it, when you say the big screen, this one, the first Deadpool movie, or X-Men Origins Wolverine Deadpool, also starring Ryan Reynolds?
Well, I saw all of that, so I guess it was that.
I guess it was that. Yeah.
It doesn't stand out particularly.
It shouldn't. It shouldn't.
How old were you when you had your first introduction?
When I was a kid, because, and we're going to get into that, he was first introduced in the 90s, so he was showing up in comics. He had an action figure that I have that I think I still might own somewhere. And so...
You're not a big fan of his.
I'm not. Well, here's the thing, though. Here's what Deadpool has, and we're going to get into that I think helped maintain his popularity before his breakout on the big screen, is he looks cool. That's why I have his action figure. And I will still argue this with most superheroes. The key is looking cool. That will get you the mileage you need to develop good stories that people will be interested in. Rare is it that right off the bat, you got stories that people like care about immediately, especially characters created in the 90s, but they look cool, and that gives you the runway you need. So,
but he doesn't look that different. You feel like he looks cool and like so unique.
I don't know. I didn't say so unique, Roxy. I just said cool. Yeah. I just said cool.
Yeah, you're right.
And that was it. Was the 90s was the rule of cool in comics. So Deadpool was first introduced in New Mutants number 98 in 1990. He was created by Fabian Nizia and Rob Liefeld. I told myself repeatedly, DJ, look up how to pronounce Fabian Nizia's last name before you do the show. Did I do that? No, I didn't. So I'm probably mispronouncing it.
It sounded perfect.
Thank you. We're going to assume I'm right, even though I'm probably wrong. So what's interesting is New Mutants, the comic, was in a transitional phase at this time. It was one of the lowest selling X books before Liefeld joined. and he started doing art on it. And the sales improved so much that they let Liefeld start doing plotting for it, to the point that he kind of pushed out the writer at the time, Louise Simonson. And then, see, now I'm going to pronounce it differently each time. Nitsia was brought on for a dialogue pass. And this is actually kind of the way Stan Lee comics were originally done with Spider-Man and Fantastic Four. Is the artist would do kind of the plot and the art, and then Stan Lee would come in and put in the words. I believe that when they talk about the Marvel method, I believe that was the Marvel method at the time. But you know, more experts will come in and correct me. So at the end of New Mutants, Liefeld introduced Cable, who kind of became that team of Young Mutants mentor, and the series ended with issue 100 and then was rebranded into X-Force. So when Deadpool was introduced, we're 2 issues away from the big rebrand, and X-Force was a major hit. Sold a bunch of copies, and Liefeld became a superstar, and he was one of the people that left Marvel to go co-found Image Comics. So along with Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane, and a few other guys, Eric Larson. So at this point, Deadpool is like a cult character. Like, he's not a huge hit. He got enough traction that he was able to get a mini series. There was an action, like I said, I had his Toy Biz action figure as a kid. That's not quite saying much because Toy Biz was making action figures of everybody. Are you familiar with the character Kane or Gideon?
Biblical.
Yeah, but the X-Men character, you're not, but they had action figures. So I don't know that it's like a huge, like Deadpool had an action figure. It's like everybody had an action figure then. Mike Joyce asked in the Discord, who came first, Deadpool or Deathstroke? So they're obviously, infamously, Deadpool's connected to Deathstroke. Deathstroke came out well before Deadpool. Roxy, as you mentioned, you asked me, do you consider Deadpool's design original? I don't, because it is very much a ripoff. It's basically if you took Deathstroke and said, hey, what if it was more like Spider-Man, and you've got Deadpool?
Okay. I could see that.
Yeah. Which is, by the way, kind of Liefeld's stock and trade. That's kind of what he does mostly. Yeah, so Deadpool is pretty infamously a Deathstroke. I had a stroke right there. A Deathstroke ripoff, to the point that even his name, Wade Wilson, is a riff on the Slade Wilson character, who's Deathstroke in the comics.
Wow, I never put those 2 things together. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's to the point where when Liefeld brought Deadpool to Nitsia, he was like, "That's just Deathstroke." And based on the stories I was reading, Liefeld was like, "Yeah, exactly." So yeah, he had his own miniseries. He eventually got his own ongoing title written by Joe Kelly with art by Ed McGuinness. This is kind of where the Deadpool everybody knows and loves started to take shape as a character. In these stories, they started developing a supporting cast, including Weasel and Blind Al. If you've seen the movies, you're familiar with both characters. It is also the series that introduced Deadpool's a predilection for breaking the fourth wall. Although I want to say, I should have written that down as a note. It wasn't until like issue 12 or something that he started breaking the fourth wall. He was comedic. He would sometimes make meta jokes, but it wasn't until like deep into this Joe Kelly run that it became like Deadpool breaks the fourth wall. That's something he does as a character.
What do you think the impetus for that change was? Do you think they just were like, oh, this really works naturally with this character? Or was that something that was happening a lot at the time period?
So fortunately, I wasn't picking up this book when it came out. In fact, have I read any of it? I've been meaning to go back and read it because actually Joe Kelly's one of my favorite comic writers. But I was reading kind of like a history of it, and it seemed to be something that they kind of introduced. Like there's one point where he's like drugged or he has a psychological break, and he starts doing it as like an in-joke in the comic. And then from that point on, it kind of became more common. And I think it's just one of those things that readers responded to it. It made Deadpool more distinct, and it kind of just became part of the character. And then, like most characters, once they're adapted into a more popular medium, like movies, then it becomes codified as like, this is the character's thing. Kind of like to the degree that, you know, reading comics growing up, Spider-Man has had dozens of different girlfriends, but post Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1, Mary Jane is it. Every girlfriend is Mary Jane. So to answer your question, I think it's just something that the writers liked doing and found worked for the character. But I would argue, if you're a fan of Deadpool, it's arguably because of Joe Kelly. And like I said, I'm a big fan of his work. I didn't read this as a kid. A lot of our younger audience members may know Joe Kelly as the co-creator of Ben 10. That I was a little too old for that. But he also has underrated runs with Superman and Justice League that are actually some of my favorite runs that I don't think get enough love because they're in between bigger runs. He also wrote probably my favorite Spider-Man issue. And he's currently writing the Deadpool Wolverine comic that is hitting stands now. So his run was constantly on the bubble. It was repeatedly almost getting canceled. It only got salvaged by early internet write-ins. People were like, hey, save this comic, and they brought it back. But it happened so many times, like, and Roxy, you'll be really familiar with this because this happens with TV shows a lot. Joe Kelly kept thinking he was going to get canceled, so he kept like wrapping everything up, and then they're like, hey, you got more issues. So finally he was like, you know what, I'm done. I'm wrapping up my run. I'm tired of pretending like it's the end and it's not the end. This is it for me.
Good.
Yeah.
He was like, I'm going out on my own terms. Stop messing with me.
Yeah. So they brought other writers in after him, Christopher Priest and Gail Simone, who are also fan favorites generally. But eventually the title got canceled and it got retooled into Agent X. Roxy, have you ever seen this character before in your life?
What's weird is that when you said Agent X, it sounds very familiar, but maybe that's just because Agent X sounds like every villain that could ever villain.
Yes.
Have I seen this character? I don't know. You tell me.
I doubt it because I am barely familiar with this character to the degree.
Is the X on top of his head carved in, burned in?
Yeah. I don't know. Good question. But it was one of those. This is what they replaced. They were doing a big rebrand at the time, like. So Cable got rebranded as Soldier X. Deadpool got rebranded as Agent X, although the character is not Deadpool. I guess it's just a similar tone. I want to say, I didn't read the book, but I want to say that was intentional. They wanted to be a mystery. Is it Deadpool? Is it not Deadpool? It's not. He wasn't. Both that and Soldier X got canceled, and they both got replaced with a Cable and Deadpool comic that lasted 50 issues. What I always find interesting about this is you can kind of track the popularity of a character by who gets top billing. And it's funny to me that when this comic was released, Cable gets top billing over Deadpool. And now, in the year of our Lord 2024, there's a movie coming out where Deadpool is billed over Wolverine. That's crazy.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
It is crazy. I mean, like, we have seen this stuff happen with a lot of the Marvel characters in general, I feel like, as times kind of change, and it all depends on the popularity on the big screen.
Yeah.
It's just what it is. Like, it doesn't matter in the comics what lands with people. It doesn't make it to the big screen. Like, it is just all about the big screen.
Yeah, 100%. To the point where, like, Iron Man was so popular at one point that they were like, what if we made Spider-Man more like Iron Man? It's like, that's insane though. Do you guys hear yourselves? That's crazy. Like, I get what you're doing. And especially Deadpool and Wolverine gets a little bit of a pass because it's kind of also it's the third Deadpool movie, but it's just weird. Like, I don't know. When I saw this comic and I was like, that's right. Deadpool had a comic with Cable, and Cable was top billed over Deadpool. That's insane. That's nuts. So, interesting thing about that, at the time it was the longest running Deadpool book, I believe. Or maybe it was the single, Initia came back to write it, so maybe it was his longest run with the character. But I think what'll stand out most for most people is there is a joke in it where Deadpool, and for those watching the video, I brought it up, where Deadpool compares himself, he says he looks like Ryan Reynolds crossed with a Shar-Pei. I think this predates the Deadpool movie by about 10 years, to the point that when a studio exec was trying to lure Ryan Reynolds to the role, he handed Reynolds a bunch of Deadpool comics, including this comic of Cable and Deadpool. And I have this quote from Ryan Reynolds. So he sent me over all these comics, and I'm not a huge comic book guy, but I really gravitated towards Deadpool. I fell in love with Deadpool. The first issue I opened up, I'm not making this up, I was on the panel. Like in the comic, it said Deadpool was saying, quote, I look like a cross between Ryan Reynolds and a Shar-Pei. And I was thinking, Jesus, this is fucking destiny. Like because I was aware of this joke. I thought it was post Ryan Reynolds being in the role. I didn't know it predated. And honestly, I had to look up a Sharpay, and I'm like, I actually don't know that this joke works or makes sense, but whatever. It was fate. It was destiny. It was kismet.
I had a Sharpay.
Does this, hold on, let me bring this up again. Does that look like anybody crossed with a Sharpay to you?
Yeah, because the wrinkles of the face kind of.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I totally see the reference. Do you think, I mean, maybe this is me just reading way too much into it, but do you think that there's a world in which they knew that would be eventually who they were gunning for, and so they stuck it in that, like, how much manifesting versus...
Yeah, I do think there is a lesson in here for budding comic writers that maybe you should have your character compare to themselves to movie stars more. Have somebody come in like, wow, I look so much like Anya Taylor-Joy right now, or whatever, you know? It wouldn't be crazy if Sydney Sweeney played me in a movie. But yes. I do think maybe, clearly, like, the exec saw something in Ryan Reynolds, like, with his type of humor, and so maybe it was like in the ether. Maybe people were watching they were watching Waiting, and they're like, hey, that guy would make a good Deadpool. Like, maybe it was just in the collective consciousness.
I think that what's kind of cool about this, though, is that all of us are human, and sometimes I forget that about celebrities. Like, I think that they are just getting referenced so often that doesn't even affect them. But, like, for every person, when you hear your name,
yeah,
that's my name, you know? Like, I like when I hear about musicians, or they hear, or like actors, they hear their name in a song and they're like, what? That person's singing about me. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like their inner nerd kind of comes out. So hearing him be like, I opened the page and it said my name on it, and it's like, to us, that's not that weird. It's like, yeah, no shit, it said your name on it, you're very famous. But to him, it's like a calling.
Yeah, know? Exactly. This was my moment. So in the Discord, Jake Hefner asked, do you think Deadpool would be as popular as he is today if Ryan Reynolds wasn't involved with the character? What do you think about that, Roxy?
I mean, is the question if Ryan Reynolds wasn't involved with the character and somebody else was? Or is the question if Ryan Reynolds and nobody else was involved on the big screen with the character?
Well, I guess that plays into a question I've been thinking, because I think having Ryan Reynolds play the character has moved the character in a very specific direction, to the degree that, like, if you're reading Iron Man comics, I would imagine for most people it's hard not to hear Robert Downey Jr., especially as the character has been remodeled to be more like his take on the character from the movies. Mm-hmm. I think there's something similar. Like, I think you could do other takes on Deadpool, but I think Ryan Reynolds has so distinctively put his stamp on it that it would be challenging. So I guess part of that question is, could you imagine somebody else playing Deadpool? And could you imagine that fitting, like, because I guess if there's no Deadpool, I'll answer this question first as I work it out in my mind in real time. I kind of think no, for a couple of reasons. One, Ryan Reynolds had to care so much about the character to salvage him from X-Men Origins Wolverine. Like, if anybody that's been watching Mutant Academy, Sal and I have been going through the X-Men movies. We just finished with New Mutants, and we've been ranking them. And consistently since we rewatched it, X-Men Origins Wolverine was the bottom of our list. No X-Men movie is, according to us, is as bad as X-Men Origins Wolverine. And part of that is the way they did Deadpool. So Ryan Reynolds had to care enough to, like, pull that character from the wreckage so that they would make another movie to prove the character's worth. And I have trouble imagining any celebrity caring enough about a specific character to do that. I do think, because there was that Donald Glover animated series where I believe Donald Glover was going to voice Deadpool, and I actually would have been really interested in seeing that. But you don't get that without the Ryan Reynolds one. So I'm going to say, even though I could see other actors maybe portraying him, I don't think he would be as popular as he is now without Ryan Reynolds' dedication. What do you think?
My answer to this is always going to be yes, because what the question at its core is are there actors always for a role that could do equally as good of a job, 360 full package?
Yeah.
And my answer is always going to be yes. Mm-hmm. Like, because there's just so many fucking actors that are so talented that I can't sit here. I can sit here and say, I think that Ryan Reynolds was the best person for the job. And I do.
Yeah.
But I can't sit here and say, I don't think anybody else ever was going to be ever as good as him. There was no world in which anybody could be as good.
Yeah.
I could say I don't know that anybody could be better, but as good and perfect for it. Yeah, there's millions of actors. And there's now at this point, thousands and thousands of A-list celebrities.
Yeah.
And people who would be extremely dedicated. And while I do find that this is not the easiest role to play, it's also not the hardest.
Yeah.
Like, there are people who have cool comedic chops. You know, he would have been too old for it at the time, but like, wouldn't it have been cool to see somebody like a Jim Carrey in this role? Like somebody who's like a classically trained comedian.
Yeah.
There would be really cool iterations of that. And like, I think that Ryan Reynolds did go above and beyond. We couldn't ask for anything more from him.
Yeah.
But yeah, any role ever of all time, I'm always going to think there was somebody else who could have done as good, even if it was different.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah, that makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. So there are a lot of Deadpool runs. I'm not going to go through all of them. A lot of them are fan favorites, if not bestsellers.
You won't. You won't.
I won't do it. I'm not going to do it.
You won't go through all of them.
But
okay, now share with the class, DJ.
No, man, I need to shut that off. Why did that chime in the middle of my?
Share with the class, DJ.
That's frustrating.
Was it Ryan Reynolds saying?
Didn't I shut that off? Oh my god! Yeah, it was Ryan Reynolds frustrated with me. Gosh,
unless you want me to show up on the show, never say my name.
Yeah. I do want him to show up on the show. I'd love that. Here's the one that might be pertinent to Deadpool and Wolverine, especially the movies that are going around it. There was a comic in 2010 called Deadpool Core that features alternate versions of Deadpool, including Lady Deadpool, Headpool, which is a severed zombie head version of Deadpool that flies around with a little helicopter top, Kidpool, and Dogpool. I've had heard rumors for every single one of these characters showing up in Deadpool 3, Deadpool and Wolverine. The biggest one being Lady Deadpool. The rumor is Lady Deadpool is going to show up, played by Blake Lively, which wouldn't surprise.
So sick.
That wouldn't surprise me at all. That actually seems pretty likely.
That's so great. What a high pony that was.
Yes.
I'd be obsessed if Blake Lively showed up. I think that they're a really great, cute seeming couple, and like being able to spend more time on set and watching their chemistry on screen would be very fun for the people, I think. Did you say core like Green Lantern?
Yes.
Is that common in comic books?
Core? Common enough.
Yeah.
Common enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Common enough that when you hear it, you don't automatically think Green Lantern?
No. Although you bring that up, and it's like the missed opportunity to not do another Green Lantern dig if they use the term Green Lantern or Deadpool core in the movie. Got to get another dig in there. And I will point out, Ryan Reynolds felt the need to try and resurrect Deadpool. Didn't do it for Green Lantern. Threw Green Lantern under the bus.
There's still time. DJ.
There is still time. I have said before that I would have brought Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern back for Justice League and have Darkseid kill him in the opening scene. I would have done with that. Oh, and I meant to say, I'll save this in between shows. I'll save it in between shows for those that watch live. Ooh. So we mentioned before, Deadpool first appeared on the silver screen with X-Men Origins Wolverine. It was a bad movie, and Deadpool was not well utilized in it. Although I just found out this version, the one on the screen, the one with his mouth sewn shut, was performed by Scott Adkins, who's an incredible action actor. And then through a clever use of YouTube, Ryan Reynolds was able to revive the character in the 2016 movie. And the rest, as they say, as the kids say, is history. And now we're well on our way to the third Deadpool movie, also starring Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. One of these outlets did an interview between the two of them where they're talking about their friendship, and it's very sweet. Couple final questions from the Discord. Leonard Kim asks, what is your favorite Deadpool comic run? I am not traditionally the biggest Deadpool fan. However, I do like Joe Kelly's takes in general. I like his writing in general. And I like him when he pairs with other characters. So Joe Kelly wrote a Spider-Man Deadpool crossover that was very good. And he's currently writing the Wolverine Deadpool crossover, which I've only read the first issue of, but is very good. And I've been meaning to go back and read his Deadpool run because it's so vital. And because I like his writing so much, it might be like, oh man, I really like this. But I'm not there yet. Grayson asks, hopefully this can lead to having more X-Men adjacent characters getting stories. Domino, Cable, Psylocke, etc. What characters would you want to see in an X-Force type movie show? Basically, a Mutant Thunderbolts, LOL. So Roxy, if they were going to make... They've been teasing an X-Force movie. We saw a version of X-Force in Deadpool 2. But if they were going to make like a Dirty Dozen, Suicide Squad, X-Team... Are there some like B-list X-Men characters you would like to see on said team?
I don't know that I know B-list X-Men characters.
What about Domino from Deadpool 2?
I liked Domino.
Yeah, she's an X-Force.
I like Domino.
All right.
What's your answer? I think you would know more than me.
I want to see Phantom X. He's probably my favorite X-Men character. He was created by Grant Morrison. He's like if Wolverine is Weapon X, Grant Morrison established the Weapon X means Weapon 10. It's Roman numerals. So Phantom X is Weapon 13. XIII.
Okay. And
he's a classic Grant Morrison creation. Like his nervous system is outside of his body in a spaceship that he flies around in. He's got I think he's got multiple brains. He's basically a super thief and kind of like the classic amoral, and I mean amoral in a very traditional sense of like just does his own thing, doesn't really care about sides or anything like that. And I think he's cool. I think Phantom X is so cool. The writing can be very hit or miss. Rick Remender did an X-Force run that focused on Phantom X, and it was amazing. Subsequent writers have done things with Phantom X that I don't love. So it can be a tricky character to like get, in my opinion.
Okay.
But if you did it right, I just love the character. I think he's super cool. And I would love to see more of him. I didn't love X-Men 97. If in X-Men 97 season 2, Phantom X shows up, it's like, you sons of bitches, you got me. I like that character. But yeah.
It's one of the reasons I love being a TV fan so much is because like you get to know more B-list characters. And I never watched any of the Marvel shows like that. I mean, I've watched, the Netflix ones, but I'm saying I didn't watch this X-Men show. It's like, why, when you ask me about DC things, any B-list characters that you want involved, this TV shows get to do way more fun deep cuts than any of the movies. And if you only know the characters from the movies, which is the only way I know the X-Men at all, you don't get to know the deep cuts.
Yeah, they don't have the time to do the deep cuts. They're having to fit an entire team of characters in one movie. So there you go, kids. There's the stuff that you probably didn't know about Deadpool. Hopefully this helps going into Deadpool and Wolverine, which we will be covering on the show when that drops. But Roxy, before we go, any final thoughts on Deadpool?
I wish that you liked him more.
Again, I think he looks really cool.
I love the character. I'm very excited about this. I am hoping that you are going in with the lowest expectations to this newest movie so that you can like it and we can talk about it here, because I just know for a fact I'm going to like this one.
I like Deadpool too, and I like the trailers for Deadpool and Wolverine. So we'll see. We will see. But I like Deadpool too. I think I like Deadpool better when he's able to bounce off of other characters. So in Deadpool 2, you had Cable and Domino. And this next one, you've got one of the most iconic superhero characters and actors to play that superhero as his straight man. It's like, that's probably going to be good. You know what I mean? And they've got a real friendship in real life. That's probably going to be good.
Yeah. Okay. Open mind.
Open mind. Hey, man, it's what you got to do. It's what you got to do. Mm-hmm. Roxy, where can the kids find what you're working on?
You can find me everywhere at Roxy Stryer. Been doing a lot of stuff for Real Rejects recently, and soon to be dropping a merch line over there. So be on the lookout for that.
Stay tuned for that. You can find me at DJ Talks Trash. You can find this show everywhere that matters at Only Stupid Answers, but on Twitter/X.
Yank out the balance from stupid.
And we will see you all next time. Bye, everybody.